Thank you. This is the second lesson, lesson 2 of the Pathway to Ascension professional course. We're working out of Pathway to Ascension Volume 1. This is for New Standard Systemology, developed last year for 2024. And if you're using the booklets, I still need to bring in the booklet versions. If you're using the booklets, it's the second booklet. It's booklet professional course booklet number 2, and the title is Thought and Emotion. So let's just get right into this. We'll try to see if we can get through lesson 2 in less than 2.5 hours, maybe within the 2-hour framework, as opposed to the second one here. All right. So we are still working in processing level 0. We're getting an individual up to 0, actually, up to a point of 0 to work at level 1 processing. So, you know, we're not trying to use level 0 as to be degradatory or whatever to the situation. It's simply trying to get an individual up to a point where they can actually be processed, where a seeker can actually process to these higher levels. So we are working at level 0. This is PC2, thought and emotion. And the first thing, before we get too much farther along the pathway, the first thing that we introduce in lesson 2, and this is whether seekers co-pilot or flying solo, it's traditional to keep a flight log. And in 2020, I believe it was, after we had done the original Tablets of Destiny Revelation series in Crystal Clear, we were basically had established our fundamental, the original way in which we were doing processing prior to the formal session script that you see in your materials, and we developed something called the Truth Seeker's Adventure Journal. And it basically was a notebook that was pre-printed to contain specific information, data that you could record from individual sessions. I believe that's still available. I know it is still available. Okay, so I know that it hasn't really been promoted as much in the New Standard Systemology and some of the work in the last couple of years, but it's actually still valid. And what does it contain? Well, this is the kind of information you would want to record with each session. So we have the name of the pilot or co-pilot, the date and day of the week, the location of the session, the weather conditions, environmental conditions, and then where we have beta awareness and time, we want this at the start and end of the session. So we want the beta awareness, and this is just an approximation, the seeker's beta awareness using the beta awareness scale that we've already covered. Approximation at the beginning of the session, along with the time of the start of the session, and then also the beta awareness and the time at the end of the session. And then you're going to want to, of course, record any of the processes that have been run, and terminals, listing any terminals, and also anything, when this was originally laid out years ago, everything was being done traditional piloting, co-piloted. So that means that someone else was recording this information, and an individual could keep a journal afterwards. A seeker could keep their own journal. That was the original idea behind this, and then we'd have a different one for pilots. This one ended up being used as the pilot version as well. So so anything the seeker says, and then any realizations that appear, and these records are important. Of course, we are treating this as a systematic science, not just a theoretical spiritual philosophy. We're treating this as an applied systematic science. So records are important, especially if you want to trace. We talked about underrun in the previous lesson. You want to be able to trace stuff like that. You want to be able to see, keep a record of what's been re-stimulated in various processes, how it's been handled, and so forth. And also any terminals or anything. Terminals, again, we'll get more into that, but terminals being things with mass at the end of a communication circuit. We talked a bit about this in the basic course, and it'll come up many times again. We'll get more into that. But the techniques that we include in this professional course, they're not meant to be particularly strenuous. However, even the most basic of these processes can stir up or trigger various things. And what we want to do as part of the education process of the Pathway to Ascension is give the tools that can be used to handle them as they resurface. So the second reason, in addition to a pilot, if you're co-piloting, the pilot recording the session, there's the additional reason for, and this is why keeping a diary or a journal, this is why that method has been, I'll explain why that method has actually been therapeutic for people since, the dawn of writing. But it's basically a way of extroverting after a situation or after the session to be able to get all the stuff that took place or everything that's been handled and so forth and put it down on paper and see it external from the individual, to write it out and see it external from the individual. This is also done in when, in lieu of like getting into session and presence and so forth, various methods of spiritual ability, what some have referred to as remote viewing and so forth. The first steps to this, to such a session, would be to write out anything that's on an individual's mind, anything that they would be otherwise thinking about. And this is, again, to exteriorize it from the individual's mindset, so to speak. Get them distant from it, or see it distant from them, rather than being something that they're worried about. And this is what we handle. We won't get into that too much again, because we've talked about presence in session, how to get into, how to bring awareness, collect awareness to focus, to get into session and actually do some processing. The same applies to really any other method. And so the journaling, again, is to be able to see it external from the individual and get that separate from them. So the first section So control of mind-body. We've talked about this in the basic course and describing how to get into session and so forth. But control of mind-body, the thoughts of the mind and subsequent emotions of the body are technically under the command of the alpha spirit. Of course, we, concerning the general standard issue human condition, most have found themselves relinquishing this control to others, to other mechanisms, automation, and so forth. But and sometimes it's just part of the roles we play. And we get into game theory, the concept of games, later on as we go along the pathway. But sometimes it's really just a matter of that, or perhaps, helping to keep things interesting. In the end, though, because the randomity, the knowingness, we talked about knowingness, not knowingness. When we talk about the alpha spirit as a being, we have beingness being the utmost of what an alpha spirit is. An alpha spirit, in their absolute, at their utmost point, is already a being, a spiritual being, essentially unlimited spiritual being, or a being with unlimited, and we call it creative ability. So alpha spirit is a beingness with creative ability. It has the ability to create anything. And so before it can actually know something, it actually creates something to know about. So we have beingness and knowingness. So it can create anything, it can create something to know about. And of course, when it comes down to the game, see, an individual, the alpha spirit, can't do anything but be, but exist infinitely as far as we can tell. Whatever it may consider the conditions of that existence, whatever its viewpoint has been fixed to or not fixed to earlier on the track. But beingness, knowingness, this is the actual order, higher, a descending order of what our spiritual journey, really was in its beginning. So in order to engage in this, because an alpha spirit could create an entire universe and operate it, third person, like a course of marionettes or so forth, or even program things to operate on automatic, but again, knowingly doing so. In order to really participate or have any sense of game or adventure, it then has to intentionally not know. And there's a line there, because between, once we fall below the line of not know, well, only then can we actually have something to think about. When we have created the thing, permeated its existence, and are all knowing about it, there's really nothing to think about. So that is, again, we treat this as alpha. And then, of course, that which would pertain to the mind system being not only automatic circuitry of knowingness set up and not knowingness, and things on, being now set up on a compulsive or continuous basis without us thinking about it. It gives us something to think about. And you wonder why this would even take place. We have to remember the alpha spirit, us as an individual beingness, spiritual beingness, have existed, well, near infinitely, and we get bored, just as we would within the human condition. So in order to have things to think about, in order to have things to play with, we have to selectively not know. And we'll get more into game theory as we go along. So when we talk about knowingness, though, and the reason I set this up here, when we talk about knowingness, that is different from thinkingness. And then, of course, once we get down to the level of the body and whatnot, then we have, doing and effort. But it should be understood, this is something of a scale. This just isn't just a list. This is something of a scale and an illustration, actually, of what's taking place as the alpha spirit interacts with the environment, with the material universe in this case, through a chain that some of which, of course, has been set up prior to this universe in order for us to participate compulsively in this universe and be, quote unquote, stuck or entrapped in it, as so to speak. But really, the point is that this should always be under an individual's control. And thinkingness and knowingness are two completely different things. I mean, thinkingness is a beta equivalent of the knowingness on an alpha level. So let's get further into the textbook here, just because we don't want to spend too much time on some of the background. Especially when you can refer to your textbook to review this information later. But in the end, regardless of what we're doing or what we're playing at, it's better to regain the total control of thoughts and emotions. And some of the basic exercises in this area of kind of attitude control are provided in the basic course. Some of the exercises in the basic course, and as an introduction, to the formal session. So some of the material in that formal session script that was based on experimental years of and hundreds of hours, if not thousands, of experimental practice with this processing. So, but let's start off with a demonstration of some light objective processing. And again, if you want to review these steps in your textbook, I'm just going to run through them quickly. And you obviously wouldn't be playing this back using it as a live session, instruction. But the PCL, choose a neutral object that you have no strong feelings about, and then look at the object. Decide to feel positive things about the object, that you love it, that's beautiful to look at, that it's wonderful to have close to you, and then maintain that positive attitude for several minutes. Now, reverse this and decide to feel various negative things about the object, that you despise it, that it's ugly to look at, that it's harmful to be near, and so forth, and then continue that for several minutes. And then reverse this again, deciding to maintain the positive attitude on the object for several minutes. Now, we're not trying to actually program any, it's better to actually end on the positive end if you're going to do a process like this, or if you can successfully neutral again. You start with an object that there's really no difference about, and then basically make yourself, having control of what your decision, your self-determined thought and emotion, that it's one way and then the other way, and then being able to be neutral again about it. And this is, we're not just doing this as a passing thing. Its effectiveness is if an individual can actually take it seriously and practice at it. And there's various unintended reactions that make one, we make our decisions based on these without always knowing about them. And what we're doing with a basic process like this, again, objective processing using, physical objects in the environment, we are kind of practicing to regain control over our considerations. And seeing also, and this is one of those realization points that, this is intended to reach, that we are the ones ultimately in control of that we have that deciding power, whether or not we've decided to put it on automatic or forgotten on automatic or allowed certain experiences to kind of manipulate or condition us to feeling one way or another about it. This is the way in which we would practice this. And so you do this for several times on the same object until any automatic reaction or anything that might stir up regarding the practice of this is smoothed out. We say flattened is the way we say it. We use the wave terms. Waves that represent fluctuation, and then a flat wave, a clear channel to whatever terminal we're dealing with. And it's best again when we're dealing with this light processing to do something with neutral objects to get a handle on it, to get a good sense of familiarity and again realization and certainty on the ability. And then of course you can practice this with other things. And again, the ultimate goal is not for us to make it so you decide, oh well, you didn't like this at one time, and so that now you do this so that you're going to like it again, and so you have to have it or something. It's simply to eliminate any of the tendencies, the circuitry that has built up over time regarding any of the facets of our existence, any of the facets of our experience, our self-determined control of experience, to manage our participation in reality. This is something that to have reached, to be here, or today, or be watching these videos, or using these books, we have descended down a long journey of considerations that we have now been able to observe and be able to isolate, systematically codify into this way of undoing it. But this didn't happen overnight, and it's also not going to be undone overnight. What we are demonstrating here is, this is the shortcut. None of the other methods, and certainly nothing that represents, a quick fix or, a motivational speech weekend that's that's going to do it. No, this journey is that we have charted out, that we have mapped. I call it spiritual cartography. I've spent the last 29 years doing spiritual cartography, mapping out metaphysical existence of the descent of essentially universes since the inception of our creation, and of universes and things to experience, and then our shared experiences with other individuals, the subsequent collapse and solidification, condensation of those universes, 29 years. And that material has actually been laid out. That material is, this isn't something we're still trying to figure out for you. I've waited until it was all mapped out, and that includes, not only the basic course, the standard Pathway to Ascension volumes, but also the advanced training course, the Keys to the Kingdom volumes, that that we have been able to actually chart successfully the way out from the bottom to the top. Now, much of what humans consider knowledge really relates to associative identification, or more simply, association. Entire fields of philosophy, such as epistemology, are dedicated to theories to explain how we know what we know, and dedicated to basically structuring, the ideas. But what we've done is come up with the idea of associative knowledge being a part of the thinkingness, which is different from seeing something as it is, which is what we say A for A, or 1 to 1, or A equals A, or seeing something as it is, versus the associative knowledge, where A is really only understood in relation to a whole bunch of other things that have been kind of related or associated to it. In psychology, they call it kind of a schema or a schema, but it's the associative knowledge that has accumulated about something, rather than just the permeating knowingness of what that something is. And again, for game purposes, for game purposes, we'll just kind of separate this here. For game purposes, there's no reason, an alpha spirit can't knowingly do this, but for example, what would happen if you forgot that you were, playing a game or playing a role, or that you had just chose to not know something so you could play the other side of it to kind of keep it engaging and interesting. If you had, been playing chess with yourself for so long, and you figured out a way to actually truly not know what the other side's position could be, or what they would be thinking, that type of thing, we'll get more into that into game theory, but most thinking, again, involves association, not knowingness, and the type of realizations that occur in processing lead to, a higher state of actual knowingness, which is what separates, our philosophy, our concepts, from some of the others, which are really more about like what to think, or how to define things and so forth, and what to think in terms of a paradigm, such as physics or chemistry or biology, or however you want to look at it. We're looking above the line to the point of actual knowingness, the knowingness, the state in which such things were created into being in the first place, and then of which we now have something to know about and do and play around with at our game level. So that's what we're after here. So one of the ways, and this is a demonstrative process more than a defragmentation process, but when first practicing this next one, you want to select an object around you that has a lot of mass to it, such as a table, a chair, or a bookshelf, and then select something else with mass that's not in the present environment, which would be, like a ridiculous to associate with it. And all right. So you got your, the room that you're in there. So we got an object. We'll do this differently. So here's your point of view of awareness, and you've got your, let's say, a table. And, a table, you've already, you know what a table is. When you see the table, it's an automatic association that it's a table, and then, of course, everything that is associated with that, that's something to eat at, that it's something to whatever it is, that you have associated with it. And outside, this is vehicle or whatever. We're trying to get this done quickly. I'm not trying to demonstrate some great prowess and visual skills here. So you look at the object and immediately think of the ridiculous association you've chosen, or look at the object and think of it that it would be this other object that's not in your view, that's completely dissimilar, not associated with it. You wouldn't look at the table and think car normally. You wouldn't look at the table and think vehicle to travel around in, or look at the vehicle table and think that it has tires. So the idea is, on practice, knowingly, we're not trying to condition or program any. We're showing you how programming takes place, and as a result of this demonstration, when you're doing well, aware, in presence, and operating on a self-determined basis, these things have therapeutic, they enable you to get a sense that you have the ability to handle this kind of stuff on your own. To be most effective, if you can alternate doing this with looking at something else around you, we talked about alternation of, our attention during processing, particularly objective processing. So let's say there's a bookcase over here. So you would practice looking at the table, but instead of that, associating concept car when you look at the table, and then alternating looking at the actual bookshelf in the room as a seen bookshelf, and alternating again with that. This is a demonstrative practice. So if it seems strange and unusual to you, well, just give it a shot. Like I was saying in the previous lesson yesterday, what have you got to lose from doing this? But do it seriously. So this is just helpful for redirecting attention and whatnot. As an advanced application, so I talked about the ways in which this stuff is all run through again, sometimes at an advanced level, and you're expected to have worked through various levels. When you complete level 0, you've completed level 0 for your ability of being able to reach that point now, and you go on to level 1. After you do a few more levels, when you go back to review or see if there's anything else available or accessible that's resurfaced, that's now known, or in the almost known category, like I was talking about in the basic course, then you can, you'll see that you're not actually, when you do this pathway to ascension volume from beginning to end, and you go back to the beginning of it to make a second run through, you're not having the same experience going through it again. So that much I can certainly say. So anyways, as an advanced application, you might try to imagine or visualize the intended alternative object in place of the object. So when you spot, the table, you're actually trying to imaginatively, again, superimpose a visualization. This just kind of helps, work on your imaginative visualization skills, which do come into play later on. But also just to get a better sense of having the association of it, because we're trying to demonstrate, the ideas and that, well, because usually we associate ideas and concepts in our thinkingness, but the actual, the substance or the significance and why we deal with terminals, see, a bookshelf, a table, and a car, these are all physical terminals, as would a person, as would a location, the location of the room, and so forth. These are physical, tangible things. And so when we associate certain concepts and ideas and feelings, they're really attached to these masses. So when we do systematic processing, we treat the terminals or the masses, our inflow or outflow or cross flows. We talked about circuits, the channels. that we maintain between ourselves and these types of objects in our environment, the relationship we have with them, or lack thereof. And so this is a demonstrative exercise in order to kind of put into perspective how much of that associative knowledge is put on automatic.
The Joshua Free imprint, JFI Publications, in conjunction with Mardukite Academy and the Systemology Society, present the single greatest breakthrough of the 21st century for all humanity, the perfection of a new standard systemology, a complete map for the way out from the bottom to the top, and your key to being an ascended master in this lifetime. Everything you need is contained in 3 progressive, self-guiding courses: the Fundamentals of Systemology Basic Course, the Pathway to Ascension Professional Course, and the Keys to the Kingdom Advanced Training Course. And each should be studied and applied in their intended sequence and order as displayed in this video. All 3 courses combined are available as 5 standard hardcover volumes, but also as 33 installments, since each single course lesson is also available individually as a pocket-sized manual. The Fundamentals of Systemology Basic Course includes Being More Than Human, Realities in Agreement, Windows to Experience, Ancient Systemology, A History of Systemology, and Systemology Processing. The Pathway to Ascension Professional Course, including processing levels 0 through 6, includes in Volume 1, Increasing Awareness, Thought and Emotion, Clear Communication, Handling Humanity, Free Your Spirit, Escaping Spirit Traps, Eliminating Barriers, and Conquest of Illusion. The Pathway to Ascension Volume 2 includes Confronting the Past, Lifting the Veils, Spiritual Implants, Games and Universes, Spiritual Energy, Spiritual Machinery, The Arcs of Infinity, and Alpha Thought. The Keys to the Kingdom AT Advanced Training Course for Processing Level 7 in Volume 1 includes The Secret of Universes, Games, Goals, and Purposes, The Jewel of Knowledge, Implanted Universes, and the Supplementals Systemology Biofeedback and Systemology Procedures. The Keys to the Kingdom AT Advanced Training Course for Processing Level 8 in Volume 2 includes Entities and Fragments, Spiritual Perception, Mastering Ascension, Advancing Systemology, and the AT Supplement Systemology Piloting. All titles are available from your favorite bookseller. Explore new standard systemology today, and may you never be the same.